Just over a decade ago, Ryan Baker and his friend Bill Lindstrom set out to establish a new wheelchair sport, lacrosse. Playing in very simply modified chairs on hard courts in San Diego, they used whatever resources they could to build on the vision of potentially starting a viable league. With a lot of hard work and dedication, Wheelchair Lacrosse has now more than 20 sustainable leagues nationwide, and I'd like to welcome one of the founders, Ryan Baker. Ryan, how are you?
Hey, hi Bob. How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, very good. We met way back in 2010, and I can still picture it. We were out on that court in San Diego. It was blazing hot. You guys were using everything you had to try and get something started. I mean, you had old quickie wheelchairs, beat up equipment, used sticks, whatever it was that you could find. What the heck was it that made you want to, put forth so much of a challenge when there were so many other established sports?
Wow, yeah, that's a really good question, because there is a fair amount of opportunity for us, post-injury. But as a full-time wheelchair user, when it comes to team sports, I felt like our options were just a little bit more limited. There's obviously the wheelchair racing, which you're well known for, and some of that endurance stuff. There's wheelchair tennis, snow skiing, there's water skiing if you have a boat. But when it comes to team sports and organized, sport disciplines for people that are wheelchair users or athletes in chairs, it was pretty much basketball. There was a wheelchair softball, or there is wheelchair softball, which is also great. But we just thought lacrosse deserved a seat there at the table of wheelchair sports, and we wanted to kind of add another discipline to the community, and we felt like lacrosse would be a good option because we feel like it translates well from our able-bodied counterpart into the wheelchair version.
As I was poking around looking at some of the information on the sport, you were quoted as saying, and I thought this was really appropriate when I think about it, the speed of basketball, the skill of hockey, and the toughness of rugby. So you've combined a lot of different sports into one sort of genre. That must have been a pretty difficult, sell for, many of the people that you were trying to indoctrinate into the sport.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, what we're doing is not going to be for everybody. Just like, not everybody's going to eat green beans or something. But what's interesting, and that's another very good question, what a lot of people might not actually know is that lacrosse is the oldest sport or oldest known game in North America. The Native Americans brought this to, the world basically through what they call the creator, or who they call the creator. Native Americans have, they call lacrosse, we call lacrosse, how do I want to put this? The Native Americans' term is the creator's game. So they feel like it was bestowed onto them, it's centuries old. And Dr. Bill Naismith, I think he's the gentleman that created basketball from Canada. He actually invented basketball for his lacrosse team to do something during the winter and to keep them active. So he invented basketball for his lacrosse players.
Oh, no kidding. That's pretty interesting trivia.
And so you're right. Lacrosse is a combination of many things because lacrosse was able to help sort of give way to other sports. Unfortunately, it's lost some of its traction, and other sports are now more popular, more sexy, bring in more dollars, more attendees, more fans, that kind of thing. But even with that, we're very thrilled about what we've been able to accomplish over the last decade or so.
Oh no, it's truly amazing. I do think back to those days on that court when you guys were out there in those old beat up quickies. And so I was looking at some of the chairs, and what was immediately obvious to me was that the chairs seem to have this sort of interesting hybrid combo between a tennis, a basketball, and a rugby chair. You got the hoop out front, you've got the anti-tip in the back, as you would in tennis, but nonetheless with rugby, they've got to build up these big beefy chairs for the hard hits. Your chairs look a little bit more, I don't know, not necessarily fragile, but maybe a little bit lighter and more maneuverable. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we've done, Bob, is we've just essentially replicated the basketball specs for the wheelchair itself. We didn't really feel like we needed to, reinvent the wheel when it came to the wheelchair. Most individuals, most programs will have access to basketball chairs. And so in the rule book, it basically just says you can play with a basketball chair. So as long as it falls within those parameters, then it would be considered a legal chair. We don't allow pickers on the front of the wing like rugby chairs do, but we still do require the wing just as a safety element, to protect our feet and our knees from that, incidental contact that's going to happen out there when you're setting picks. And yeah,
Ryan, you mentioned rules, and I want to jump into that really quick. So it's still an 8-on-8 format, and you have some pretty good hard checking or hitting, as it might be. But the one rule that it seems that you guys have put in place is to make sure that people hit in front of the axle so you can
Correct.
see the person coming. I have to assume that is a safety factor.
It is a safety factor. I mean, obviously safety is going to be a huge priority, probably number one. I mean, if people get hurt, we're going to lose players and, it'll eventually just sort of fall off, right? Safety's got to be a priority. But more than that, we're just sort of trying to, keep it in line with our able-bodied counterpart. So with regards to the rules and more equipment, the stick itself still needs to be at a minimum length of 40 inches. The lacrosse stick itself cannot be shorter than 40 inches.
Okay.
So that rule is the same in the men's game. So we haven't really adapted any of the lacrosse equipment. We've just sort of made it accessible to wheelchair users. It's much like basketball, right? Like they're not going to lower the hoop for us just simply because we're playing in wheelchairs. The hoop is still 10 feet. Yeah. So we're still playing with the required equipment right down to the mouthpiece, helmet, shoulder pads, elbow pads. You have to wear gloves. You get a little bit of pushback from guys that are first starting and trying to learn how to push with the stick in their hand while wearing gloves. But that's overcome in about 30 or 40 minutes after they really start getting mobile. And, we allow checking. So it's physical, and we just have to have the protection.
Now, the one thing I wasn't able to really uncover within the rules, and I'm a little bit curious about, is as with rugby, where they have a point total on the floor, with your 8 players, do you also have a point total, or is it just the best 8 players you can field on each team?
Yeah, that's another great question. We currently do not enforce a classification. So anyone can play, any level of disability, we will find room for you in a program, on a team. We've had pretty high functioning, high point quad rugby guys that come out. They can grip a stick. Maybe they wrap it around their hand, similar to a tennis racket, so they can push and catch and throw, with one arm. We're not going to turn anyone away, but we're also, the league itself and the level of play is evolving, and it's getting to a point now where we are now thinking about having to enforce a classification.
Well, I would think undoubtedly, especially if you're looking towards the future, like, one of the things that I'm thinking off the top of my head after 10 years is perhaps you're looking at maybe more international clubs and or even taking a shot at the Paralympics. Have you considered that?
Yes, absolutely. We are working, like as mentioned, we're working toward a classification, but as a part of that, it will probably, it will spill over into like an international format. It's logistically, though, for us right now, Bob, it's a little bit of an undertaking because our board now has to consider the logistics of the classification and who's going to do the classifying. We have classifiers in place that we can obtain through basketball and different things. It just then becomes about the point structure, and with the 8 players on the floor, how many points does that equal in total? The other thing that is a challenge for us with this is we sub on the fly. So if a 2-point player comes off, then a 2-point player has to go back on, and the referees and officials have to be aware of this, and things happen very quickly. And so we have a lot to consider when we start talking about how to enforce the classification and then what that looks like moving forward.
So with that forward motion, how do you sell this sport to the next level up, that being the Paralympics, if you're really going to the top?
Yeah. So right now I've been really fortunate to be involved with a group called World Lacrosse. And you can go to worldlacrosse.sport, check them out. It's the organization that is helping lacrosse get back to the Olympic Games. So our goal as World Lacrosse, I'm on a development committee. So I kind of have really been able to learn a lot, create some relationships, and just hear how they're working with the International Olympic and Paralympic Committee now to get lacrosse back into the Olympics. And the goal is 2028 in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice. So, right here on your home turf.
Yes. Well, that would be for the able-bodied. That would be for our able-bodied counterpart.
Right.
But in order for us to have that opportunity, we need our able-bodied counterpart to become an Olympic sport. It's pretty rare that a disabled sport or a Paralympic sport will precede its able-bodied counterpart.
Of course.
But, there are exceptions, I suppose. Like, I'm not sure if able-bodied, an Olympic competition has bocce ball, but I know that there's bocce ball at the Paralympics. That might be a rare example. So we're very excited about the opportunity or the prospect of lacrosse becoming a medal sport in the Olympic Games again, which it was back, in the 20s. It was removed, obviously, for reasons, and it gave way to other sports. But we're hopeful that it will be back in the Olympic Games. Once that happens, then we will have more traction on the para sport side.
Sure.
To then partner with different countries. We will then be able to hopefully hold a world championship with 6 countries, maybe 8 different countries, in order to demonstrate to the International Olympic Committee that what we're doing is viable and sustainable on an international scale.
Speaking of sustainability, the one thing you have to have there is funding and or money. Are you seemingly at the point where you're gaining enough interest that funding is coming into the sport to support these new teams?
Well, one of the points of interest for us is that the able-bodied version or lacrosse itself is accepted into the Olympics as a medal sport. That will be, through the international Olympic community, an injection of funds to the lacrosse world at large, which will in turn sort of help us on an international scale. when it comes to our domestic model and what we do here in the United States is we've been able to partner with USA Lacrosse and become a member organization of our own national governing body. So we're a member organization of USA Lacrosse, which essentially means that all of our players and programs, if they would like to compete in sanctioned Wheelchair Lacrosse USA events, they have to be members of USA Lacrosse.
Okay.
Much like wheelchair tennis, now you have to have your USTA membership, and you have a USTA card with your USTA number, and you get a magazine and insurance and different things, right? So
sure.
Having developed that relationship with the national governing body of lacrosse in the United States has been really also very powerful for our organization. It gives us credibility. It gives us the insurance that we need if and when there are ever injuries or something, which we have yet to see anything major, because we really are safe out there. But yeah, it's just been a wild journey, Bob. We're really blessed. We feel really fortunate to have kind of brought the sport to the disabled community. But it's also interesting how life works, and we feel like we've gotten so much back from lacrosse, more than we've given to,
Well,
given.
Ryan, in every step of the game, when it comes to, building something as big as you're building in life, it comes with a lot of work. And, I got to say, it's a very visionary process. And, you've done a great job, and it's impressive that you were able to take it from just that really low level where you guys were just playing, sort of a club sport on a hard court, and here you are. I mean, you have something that's viable and established.
Yeah, it's been great. We had a national championship just this past August in 2022, and we had I think 10 teams, which equals about 175 players or so. A few teams fell off because of the pandemic. Life takes over with other teams. Guys have work, family. I think this next coming year, 2023, we'll be looking at hopefully 13 or 14 teams to be competing. And two of the programs that we had just this last year are brand new. It was their very first competitive event as a club, traveling together, competing in their very first tournament. And they did great. We had one program that was new from Houston and another program new that came out of New Hampshire with an organization called Northeast Passage. So watching it sort of just take on a life of its own and grow sort of organically now, it's been really great. And we just, now what we're really focused on is juniors, feeder programs, introducing this to the youth.
Getting in there at the beginning, of course.
Yeah, we would like to develop a method of competition for the kids that doesn't necessarily require all the equipment. One of the biggest barriers to entry for the sport right now is the gear. And, the protective equipment that's required isn't going to fit like, the 10 and 12-year-olds,
sure.
Right? So we have balls that are safe, that if they hit you, they're not going to hurt you. They're not going to break a window or anything. We can reduce the number of kids that play and not allow like checking to the body, but only checking to the stick, and have little box goals that they don't even require a goalie. We just need to start introducing the game now to the kids and show them this elite level that they can kind of aspire to. And again, we need to really get the youth involved because we're all going to age out eventually, right? So
I feel you. Hey, Ryan, I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with what it is you've accomplished thus far. And, I wish you the best as you move forward. Ryan Baker, he's a founder of Wheelchair Lacrosse and a visionary. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time.
You bet.